Hello friends, in this video I will explain you the detailed timeline of my green card approval process. I will also give you some of my background and the credentials that I had before I applied for my green card. So let's first start with a little bit of my background. My name is Vijay Singh. I am an assistant professor of physics at North Carolina A&T State University. I am originally from India. I came to the US in 2010. Since 2010 to 2015, I was on F1 visa. I was a PhD student at Emory University. Then in 2015, I moved to University of Pennsylvania as a postdoctoral researcher in physics. For the first 3 years, I was on F1 OPT. Then in 2018, I switched my visa from F1 to H1-B. In 2019, I got my current position, which was as an assistant professor at North Carolina A&T State University. Here, the employer was changed from University of Pennsylvania to North Carolina A&T State University, and I was still on H1B visa. Sometimes late in 2021, I realized that I was on the fourth year of my H1B visa, and I decided to apply for green card sometimes in late 2021. Before I go into the details of my green card application, let me just show you the credentials that I had. By the time I applied, I already had 10 publications. I had 194 citations on my 10 publications. I had also received 2 research grants, one from NIH, another from NSF. I had made 16 presentations at international conferences. Out of these 16, 3 were invited presentations. I had also been invited to talk about my research at 8 different universities. I had helped organize 3 different conferences at international scales. And by this time, I had also reviewed articles for 8 different scientific journals. And based on these credentials, I thought that I would be able to make a good case for my green card application. So let me now explain you the green card application process. Before you decide to apply for a green card, you need to first decide which category do you want to apply. There are mainly 3 categories that I could have applied for. These were the EB1A, which is the extraordinary ability. This is the category I actually applied for. The other category that I could have applied for was EB1B, which was for researcher or professor, and EB2 NIW, which is the national interest waiver, which somebody who is in a STEM field can apply. So these were the 3 options, EB1A, EB1B, or EB2 NIW. I could not apply for EB1B because that requires the employer to send the application for you. The other reason I was not very excited about EB1B was that EB1B is employer dependent. So during the green card application process, I would have been bound to my employer. With EB1A, even if your green card is not approved yet, but if you have the work permit, then you have the freedom to actually go and work for other employers. So I had the option between EB1A and EB2 NIW. I chose to go with EB1A because for EB2 NIW, for people from India, it can take a really long time. There are 2 steps to apply for a green card. The first step is the application, which is called I-140. This application is called Immigration Petition for Alien Workers. This is a petition where you are sending in an application to the United States government, asking them that, do you qualify to apply for permanent residency? You're not actually applying for permanent residency. You're just asking whether you qualify for permanent residency or not. The second step or the second application is the 485 application, which is the actual application to register as permanent resident or the green card application. The reason I applied for these 2 applications separately and not concurrently is that I was on an H1B visa. Now, H1B visa is a non-immigrant visa. And when you are on a non-immigrant visa, your intent is not to stay in the United States. Your intent is to do your work or do your education and go back to your home country. The moment you send in an I-485 application, you have shown to the United States government that you have an intention to stay in the United States. Now, if you apply for both these applications concurrently and your application gets accepted, great, no problem at all. But what happens if the application gets rejected? Then you have shown to the government that you have an intention to stay in the United States. Although when you came in on an H1-B visa or an F1 visa, you declared that you were coming on a non-immigrant visa and you wanted to go back to your home country. So now you have essentially violated the oath you have taken. This can affect your future application. So if your application gets rejected in the future, if you apply again for a green card, the US government can reject your application on the simple basis that the first time you came in on a non-immigrant visa, but your intention was to immigrate, which means that you lied on your port of entry. On the other hand, if you apply these two applications separately, and let's say where you send in the I-140 application and your application gets rejected, well, you had never actually shown any intent to immigrate. All you were doing was you were asking, do I qualify? And the government says, no, you don't qualify. That's it. I can apply again in the future and ask again, do I qualify? So my suggestion would be to make these applications separately, not concurrently. Okay, now that we understand this process, let's see my timeline. So this is my green card application timeline. I first sent in my I-140 application. I sent in my application in early October and it was received by USCIS on October 13th, 2021. I had applied premium processing. The reason was that I wanted a quick decision on my application. It took about 2 weeks, and in about 2 weeks, I got my approval notice. First, I got an email, and then I got a physical mail with my approval notice. The priority date on my application was October 13, 2021. After I got my I-140 approved, it took me about 2 months to prepare my 485 application. Most of the documents for I-140 and I-485 are the same, but I-485 required some additional documents, such as it requires a birth certificate. It also requires a medical certificate, which you have to get from a doctor, which is approved by USCIS, and that can take almost a month. I sent in my application in early January, and it was received by USCIS on 10th January 2022. My case was approved in July 2021, and I got the physical green card in my mail by August 2nd, 2022. Let me show you the details of the I-485 process. As I said, I sent in the application in early January. It was received by USCIS on January 10th, 2022. After about 2 weeks, I received a mail from the USCIS about my biometrics appointment. This mail essentially notified me that my application had been received, everything was correct, and I was scheduled to appear for my biometrics, which is essentially fingerprinting and pictures, etc., on February 24th. So the process itself was very simple. All I had to do was take my passport, the appointment notice that I had received, and a few other documents which they had listed in this biometrics notice. It took only about 15 minutes to get the biometrics done. They took my fingerprints, they took my picture. After my biometrics was over, I asked the staff members there that when would I receive any information about the further steps. They told me that the biometrics will be updated on their website, within 24 hours, and I should check within a day or two about the next steps. So I came back and then I waited for about a week. After a week, I looked at the portal, the USCIS portal, and there was no information. So I called the USCIS office on phone. After trying several times, I finally got hold of one of the representatives, and he told me that the biometrics was correct, all the information was correct, and it has in fact been uploaded on the portal. It's just that I am not able to see it, but he was able to see, and he saw that my application was in the next step, and it had actually gone to the next USCIS office. And after a few weeks, I got a mail from USCIS. This was a RFE notice. RFE is request for further evidence. I was actually quite surprised to get this RFE because I thought that I had submitted all the documents. I had forgotten to attach one of the notices for my H1-B acceptance. I came to the US in 2010, and at the time of my I-485 application, I had been here for almost 11 years. They wanted a complete documentation that each and every day that I was in the US, I was here legally. So out of all these 10 years, there was a period of about 2 or 3 months for which they could not account for my legal stay. And this RFE notice essentially was asking for the documentation for those three months. So when I received the RFE, this was a very simple RFE. I replied to this RFE right away. I wrote a letter and I attached the missing H1B information. And then I sent the response to RFE sometimes like in mid-April. This RFE was received by USCIS on April 28th. Of course, this was again not updated on their portal. The reason I know this is because I used tracking on my mail, and through the tracking, I came to know that my letter has reached them by April 28th. Now, once the letter reached there, I was expecting a quick response, but that did not happen because the deadline on the RFP was July 11th. I kept searching, I kept looking at the portal every day, but I realized that they are not going to respond to my application till the deadline passes. So I waited till July 11th, and after July 11th, I started looking at the portal again. My case was approved on July 21st. My cards were actually ordered on July 20th, which was a day before. On July 29th, I received the physical approval notice in my mail. And after about a week, on August 2nd, I got the physical green card in my mail. So this was the timeline of the 485 application process. The other interesting thing that happened to me was there was no interview after the biometrics. I got the green card right away. They never asked me for any interview. And generally, for EB1 applications, also EB2 and IW sometimes, there are no interviews. Looking back at this process, there are a few things that I would like to mention. First is that it took me about 2 months between getting my I-140 approved and applying for I-485. Also, if make sure that you submit all the documents, be very careful with both the applications, send in all the materials, and then you will get your application approved much faster. I think this whole process, if everything goes well, this whole process can finish within 4 to 5 months. So to conclude, I'm very happy I got my green card approved. Feel free to ask me any question. I would be happy to answer your questions, and good luck with your application. Like and subscribe. I'll put more videos. Thank you.